The Central Organization of Trade Union, that is COTU, is today holding the 42nd General Assembly here in Nairobi. Let us cruise there live.
Of the Republic of Kenya and the Special Envoy of Kenya for the Republic of Southern Sudan, Brother Benson Okwaro, the Deputy Secretary General of COTU, Brother Yuba Waba, the President of ITUC, Brussels, and the President of Nigerian Labour Congress, the Brother Zeki Mahmoud Mezzoud, Secretary General of OWATU, Brother Mohamed Mandizo from the ILO, OWATU leadership, the President of ITUC Africa, workers, representatives from across Africa and the rest of the world, ILO representatives, the government officials present, brothers and sisters. Receive greetings from Business Africa Employers Confederation and the Federation of Kenya Employers. The Secretary General of Business Africa and Executive Director of the Federation of Kenya Employers, Madam Jacqueline Mugo, sends her greetings and good wishes to all of you brothers and sisters. She will join us later in this 42nd General Council of OWATU. She has asked me to deliver this statement on her behalf. And as you know, Madam Mugo, shoes are big. I hope that I'll be to the task. Ladies and gentlemen, as we advance the social justice and promote decent work, I want to speak to eradication of harassment and violence at workplace, which remains a top priority to employers in Africa. As leaders of employers, we want to assure our workers that we shall not condone any form of harassment and violence at workplace. This is our goal. We fully support the ILO Centenary Declaration on Harassment and Violence. And you remember the Business Africa Secretary General was the Vice President at the 108th ILC conference that passed the declaration. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a known fact to you workers' representatives that 99% of all harassment and violence that takes place at the formal workplace is meted by the workers against other fellow workers. It is therefore important that workers' representatives collaborate with employers to ensure we stop this evil from occurring at our workplaces. It is when we work together that we can identify and remove any situation that aids harassment and violence at workplace in any form. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to echo three important things that are key to attainment of workplaces that are free from any form of harassment and violence. First, we need a strong and well-coordinated labor movement across Africa. Business Africa supports initiatives at continental and states levels aimed at strengthening the labor movement. When employers are united in their federations and workers are united in their unions, and these federations and unions have adequate technical, financial, and people capacity, then there will be no employment and labor relations challenge that will be hard for them to solve. The second important thing is having a large pool of sustainable, highly productive, and competitive formal enterprises in Africa. We cannot put our people in decent employment if we do not have a labor market that creates more decent jobs. The story from across Africa on job creation is very disturbing. The growth of formal private sector employment is decreasing as the growth of indecent informal sector employment is increasing. We need to rethink our policies. Good labor market policies need to help the formal enterprises expand and the informal business become more productive, thereby becoming formalized. Therefore, as workers' representatives, think of the impact of the policies you are pushing for. Sometimes what works, say, in Europe may not have a positive effect in Africa. Let us have solutions for Africa that works for Africa. The third thing, ladies and gentlemen, we need to strengthen our social dialogue and make our engagement to be more collaborative and not adversarial. I have observed that in most cases, our end goal, whether you are an employer or you are a worker, is the same. We all need high incomes. We all aspire to create wealth for ourselves and our generations, and aspire to enjoy a high quality of life. The how we attain it is where we differ. But if we engage constructively in social dialogue, we are able to get a way that is a win-win to all of us. The employer does not need to succeed at the expense of the worker, neither should the worker win at the expense of the employer. No, we should promote positions that are not detrimental to the welfare of the workers, employers, and governments across Africa. It is not in the interest of the employers for their workers to live in pathetic conditions. Neither is it in the interest of the workers for the enterprises to fail. Business Africa consistently call upon governments and leaders in the labor sector to work together to solve the challenges we all face in a collaborative way. This will help us avoid bad situations like high levels of redundancies we are observing across Africa, Kenya included. Ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity on behalf of the Business Africa and the Federation of Employers to wish COTU a successful conference. I look forward to continue working with you as we move our continent to the next level. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Obiro. I now call upon SG Owatu, Brother Ariziki, to deliver his remarks. And thereafter invite Ayuba.
Thank you, Ernest Che Guevara. You told me that they gave you this name because of Che Guevara. So it's Che Guevara of Africa, Ernest. Just, I want to apologize because I want to speak today in French, if I'm authorized. If not, I can speak in English, but you will laugh a lot this morning. And as I see, you have a lot of energy, so you can follow very well. But when I see the assistants are tired, I start to speak in English to amuse them. You know, my English is amusing, you know. That's why I want to speak this morning in French. So, Excellence, Monsieur Kalonzo Musyoka, ancien vice-président de la République du Kenya, mon cher frère Benson Kwaro, vice-président COTU Kenya, mon camarade Ayoub Awaba, président de NLC, Congrès nigérian du travail, et aussi président de la Confédération syndicale internationale, camarade représentant de la Fédération des employeurs kenyans, mon ami et mon frère, le docteur Mohamed Mamazingo, directeur du bureau Afrique à Actrave, chers frères, sœurs, comité exécutif et du secrétariat de l'USA, je citerai entre autres mon ami le baroudeur Palanga, Yakuba Katile, camarade Valentine, très silencieux, et aussi mon camarade Nzunda, chargé de l'éducation, lui qui est d'ailleurs le concepteur de cet atelier, Ibrahim Abrar, le financier, le ministre des Finances de l'USA. Mais je ne peux pas oublier et omettre de citer notre bibliothèque qui marche, notre mémoire commune, Aladji Abdoulaye Lilouma Diallo, qui est déjà à 80 ans et continue à mettre sa vie au service des travailleurs africains. Je vous demande de l'applaudir. Lève-toi pour que... Voilà cet homme. Il a eu beaucoup de problèmes avec sa femme parce qu'elle a fait une requête à l'USA. Elle nous a dit, vous ne pouvez pas laisser cet homme mourir tranquillement chez lui avec ses petits-enfants et sa petite famille. Mais il a choisi de mourir sur la ligne du front. C'est l'ancienne génération. On te souhaite une longue vie, Aladji Lilouma Diallo. Je reconnais ici notre camarade Modeguiro aussi. Il est là en tant que secrétaire général de la Confédération syndicale des travailleurs du Sénégal, mais aussi il est président de la CSI. Nous reconnaissons toujours la valeur et le combat des hommes et des femmes en Afrique. Bienvenue. Mon ami Guiraud, mais il est aussi membre du conseil d'administration du BIT. Chers délégués, donc leader, je ne sais pas s'il y a leader au féminin en français, c'est-à-dire leader femme des organisations syndicales africaines qui sont ici là. Bon, je reconnais nos camarades égyptiens, le président Djbali, et on lui souhaite la bienvenue, mais aussi nos camarades Wahballah, vice-président de l'USA. Donc, honorables invités, je reconnais nos camarades du PANAF qui sont là, et les autres honorables assistants, chers amis de la presse, et toutes ceux et celles que j'ai oubliés. Ils m'excusent d'ailleurs si je n'ai pas cité leur nom. D'abord, au nom de l'Organisation de l'Unité syndicale africaine, je vous souhaite la bienvenue ici à notre atelier, ici à Nairobi. Nairobi, c'est ma deuxième ville. Kenya, c'est mon deuxième pays. D'ailleurs, je refuse le statut d'invité quand je viens au Kenya. Je dis que je suis chez moi. Bienvenue à cette activité. Cette activité est organisée par l'USA en collaboration avec Actrave, des activités des travailleurs Bureau d'Afrique. Et je saisis cette opportunité pour remercier d'abord Mohamed Mamazingo, qui est le directeur du Bureau des travailleurs pour le bureau d'Afrique à Actrave, mais je remercie aussi la directrice d'Actrave, Maria Elena, mais sans oublier le directeur général de l'OIT, M. Guy Ryder, parce qu'il nous appuie en permanence. C'est un devoir de le déclarer ici. Nous avons choisi ce thème, nous sommes les premiers. Le docteur Mamazingo est là pour me corriger, je pense après l'adoption de la déclaration du centenaire du mois de juin passé, nous sommes les premiers déjà à mettre sur la table de discussion cette déclaration. Mais je pense qu'il faut inscrire ça dans les annales d'histoire de l'OIT. Donc, les travailleurs africains ont pris l'initiative déjà de vulgariser
the initiative of popularizing this declaration, but bringing out the idea of decent work, and what is the role that we should play to be able to implement the principles and the values that are to be found in this declaration. We have contributed to the discussion even before it was adopted. Is that not so, Mohammed? We did participate in all the activities. We have made declarations. Even more important, our 11th Congress in Bamako, that was a Congress that had as a theme this same theme. We wanted to work on decent work for the youth and women, and we have already started to implement certain activities for the good of women. We chose this theme. I'm not going to say a lot about that. I think this world that we are living in today is a world of inequality. When there are inequalities, the world becomes sick because there is a lot of injustice, there are a lot of inequalities, and our struggle takes into account that, and we seek to do away with inequalities. This is our struggle that takes different shapes, but there is also the future. We want to ask ourselves, where is the world headed? Because today's world is worrisome, and what is going to happen in the future? What is our future going to be like in this future? What is our place in this future? We have to participate in this discussion. This is a look into the future, and what is the difference between intelligence and the one who has intelligence and one who is an animal. The one who is intelligent will project into the future, and an animal is one who just accepts whatever comes in the future. So we have to come up with declarations. We have to come up with responses. The declaration does take into account quite a number of these preoccupations. We need to get all the participants. There was a noisy discussion at the General Assembly. We cannot say that this is the ideal, but it is interesting to have that as a reference for our tripartite activities or actions. And this workshop is coming in at that juncture. we want to look into the content of this declaration. What can we do? And we are going to come up with recommendations that are going to be applied at the national level. That is the most important thing. Trade unionism is at the industry level, at the factory level. That is where trade unionism is relevant. So I hope that with this activity we are going to bring forth something that is going to enable us to implement this declaration. It is true that there are some problems in the declaration, but we need to play the role that is ours. Our role, we should not be spectators. That is why we wanted to go beyond all the problems and to play the role that is that of trade unionism. I do not see any difference between a trade union and another, a worker and another. We have the same objectives. We should not have walls separating us. We can struggle together, but when we are walking along different paths, we need to have a better, more solid basis. And so the world of work, we are always victims. I'm not going to dwell on that. As most trade unionists, I have a very long tongue, and I do know how to talk, but I do not know how to give the floor to somebody else. That is my problem. So I'm making a lot of effort to be able to stop here. I would like to thank COTU Kenya, its leadership, the Secretary General of COTU Kenya, who supports us, who is working for strengthening of the African trade union movement. I would like to thank them for this very warm welcome of a very excellent organization of this workshop. It is really a world-class organization, and I think our hosts, Kenya, have really treated us well. Now, I would like to give the floor to our young leader, a young leader who is Ayuba Gwara. He came here as a very modest person. He came here as president of NLC, as trade unionist like any other, but it is not up to us to recognize your important. Our pride, there is pride in leading an international organization, and our movement is dynamic. He's a member of the ILO Council, and he's also a member of the Secretariat of COTU. I would like I would like your permission to invite him to come and say a few words to us. My brother Ayuba, you are invited to say a few words and to remind all of us that the Secretary General of COTU, he was also the president of NLC, and we recognize the role of NLC for what it has done for trade union movement in Africa. So, Ayuba, we request you to give us the honor of coming and giving us a few words. Thank you very much.
Viva African workers, viva. Viva. Viva workers' solidarity around the world, viva. Viva. Thank you very much. His Excellency, the former Vice President of the Republic of Kenya, the President of UATU, Brother Atoli, ably represented by the Vice President, the General Secretary, Brother Arzik Masaoud, our own Dr. Mohammed Wamazingo, ILO Atraf, in charge of the African region, my brother and friend, Brother Modi Giro, President of ITUC Africa, the Federation of Employers, ILO governing board members here present. I can see Sister Amal just coming in, Sister Maria Fernando Modi Giro, and my brother from the Central African Republic. Delegates from all around Africa, from East, Central, West, Southern, Northern Africa. I can see most of our colleagues here. And also very important allies, FES and Solidarity Center. I bring you very warm greetings from our Global Trade Union Federation, the ITUC, especially the Secretariat and also the elected leadership, on this occasion of this very important seminar by UATU on the future of work. This seminar is coming at a very auspicious moment, especially after the ILO Centenary Declaration, which took place in June, where all of us were there and we had two instruments. One is Convention 190 and one is a recommendation. We are today operating in a world that is unequal, where profit is celebrated over and above people. And therefore, this occasion provides us yet an opportunity for us as trade union leaders from all around Africa to prepare ourselves for the challenge of the fourth industrial revolution. The threat to work is real, and therefore we must continue to resonate our alliance with our founding declaration, the Philadelphia Declaration, which made social justice at the heart of every economic activity around the world. Because without social justice, then certainly we'll be celebrating profit over and above people. And all of us know the situation of Africa, despite the fact that we have enormous resources. But I was recently just looking at the global GDP. Only 5 big global companies, we call them the Digital 5, Microsoft, Google, Facebook, etc. Their annual turnover is more than the entire GDP of Africa, and yet we produce the resources. Most of the resources are raw material that are being used to produce those items are from Africa. But yet, what is the situation of Africa? Global wealth have more than tripled in the last 1 decade. But yet, unemployment, poverty, and inequality, exacerbated also by conflicts, have been our situation. So going into the fourth industrial revolution, we will be actually at the receiving end, because there is no doubt jobs are going to be lost. Recently, I was at an airport in the US, an airport I've been visiting for the last 10 years. At the airport, I had to check in myself. I have to weigh my bag. You have to go and pay excess luggage using your card. The number of workers at that airport have reduced by more than 80%. The challenge is real. And therefore, for us trade unions, we must take the challenge headlong. And therefore, this provides a wonderful opportunity for us to look at the challenge, cross-fertilize ideas, strategize, and face the issues headlong. It's not going to be easy. It has never been easy, but in unity lies our strength. And therefore, once again, I want to thank you, comrades. I will not go into very long speech. All of us are leaders in our own right. And the beauty of it is that all of us were in Geneva when the issue of the report of the future of work was actually discussed. So going forward is for us to continue to prepare ourselves. And therefore, I want to appreciate the leadership of UATU, especially also the leadership of ILO under Mohammed Wamazingo. Being the first continent to look at this challenge, I think is something that is worth of celebration, because we will certainly be at the receiving end. Because in terms of development, we are not at the same level. The challenges are not the same. and therefore will certainly be at the receiving end. So once again, comrades, I felicitate with all of us, and I'm happy that we are able to bring our youth and women, because they are the face of our trade union movement. I'm happy they are here, and they are all good organizers. Across our country, you cannot organize without women and youths. The success of our movement in Africa is actually anchored on the fact that youth and women must continue to have space. If they have space, then certainly we are going to win the challenge. So once again, I say solidarity, viva Africa, viva trade union workers' solidarity around the world. And let me also pay special tribute to our ambassador, Ambassador Diallo, for being here and not tired. Thank you very much.
That is great. Thank you very much. Let's clap for him again, please. That is the reality that Ayub has told us, and we have to live with that. There's a small, I forgot to mention, his title is not just a brother, but he's also doctor. I think it's important to, that's not a title you just earn overnight. So I think it's important that you get to know he's also a doctor. Now, it is my singular honor and pleasure, rather privilege, to invite Brother Benson Okwaro, who is representing our SG, Dr. Francis Atwoli. Karibu sana. Let's clap for him as he comes.
Thank you so much, Brother Nadome. His Excellency, the former Vice President of the Republic of Kenya, and brother, let me call you brother, because I've been reminded by Francis that at a point in time in your history you are also a board member of COTU. So I'll have to call you our brother. Brother Kalonzo is also a special envoy of Kenya for Southern Sudan. May I take this opportunity Brother Arzeki Mazoud, Secretary General of OATU, Brother Obiro, representing Executive Director of FKU, Sister Jacqueline Mugo, ILO Active Head of the African Desk, Dr. Mohamed Mazingo, Brother Modi Giro, ITUC Africa President, representatives of all our sub-regional trade union organizations and agencies, including ITUC, OTUA, OSTAC, SATUC, FETAF, and PENAF. On behalf of the Organization of Trade in Unity, OATU, I wish to take this opportunity to formally welcome you, Your Excellency, and thank you for finding time to join us today. We know you have a very important, a lot of activities around you, but for you to have honored us to be here on a short notice, we don't take it for granted. Dear participants, allow me to also formally welcome you all to this great city of Nairobi. This year, 2019, the International Labour Organization, ILO, commemorates 100 years of its existence in advancing social justice and promoting decent work in the world. Therefore, the Centennial commemoration provides us with an opportunity for social partners in the world of work to review and celebrate not only the ILO's history, its mandate and achievements, but also to plan ahead for its future, probably in the next 100 years to come. In celebrating 100 years of ILO, African trade unions have participated in debates, discussions, and adoptions of ILO centenary declarations during the 108th International Labour Conference, ILC. Brothers and sisters, the good news is that the declaration builds on the ILO Constitution, the Declaration of Philadelphia, 1944, and other previous declarations. It takes into account the recommendations of the Global Commission report on the future of work. The declarations in connection with the Global Commission report acknowledges that a brighter future can be realized by strengthening the social contract. Without doubt, this is a very positive statement for the trade unions to advance. To this end, social dialogue can play a key role in ensuring that the importance of this contract to managing the changes, and all the partners in the world of work should be included and participate fully in the process. Trade unions should take responsibility for building a just and equitable work of future. As the brothers before me, and particularly Brother Yob, have said, the future work for all of us, and particularly Africa, is a thing that we need to talk about almost on a daily basis, because unless we do it as trade unions, the trade unions that we represent apparently will be distinct. It is for this reason that OATU, in collaboration with the ILO ACTRAV, are implementing this seminar as another step of publicizing the ILO Centenary Declaration to Africa, to African workers. Dr. Mwamazingo, whom we appreciate for joining us here, will take us through the Global Commission report in the future work and the declaration itself. Already COTU and its affiliates have embarked on effective strategies for the implementation of the declaration to the benefit of all. This is not my statement. This is a short statement that was prepared by Brother Francis as he left for as an urgent assignment that he got this morning. And my next duty would be to invite the chief guests this morning to address us. But before I do it, it's important for those of you who are here who might not have known His Excellency Kalonzo Musyoka, that just say a few things about who he is. And I think for those who chose the topic that he was supposed to speak on, that he's going to speak on today, the history, the political history and democracy of this country, I think that's the right choice, because he has been in the Kenyan politics for so many years, and I think he knows the history of this country in the political context. Brother Kalonzo, as you must have heard, was the former vice president of this country for a number of years. Doctor, like my brother said, is also a doctor, which he achieved. Is a doctorate of letters from the Kenyatta University. It's a doctorate. He has a doctorate of divinity, Latin, from the University of Theology. He's an elder of the Golden Heart, second highest national award in Kenya. He has a beautiful educational background. I think when he told me that he's got some assignment we're going to do, it's a long one. If I had to read it all, it may take a lot of his time. And because he wants to give you much about the political history of this country, I'll just keep a few of them. But yes, it's a postgraduate diploma of business management, Mediterranean Institute of Management from Cyprus. It's a postgraduate diploma in law, Kenya School of Law. He has got a Bachelor of Law from the University of Nairobi. He has a long political career which has taken him as Assistant Minister for Works and Housing and Physical Planning from 1986 to 1988. From 1993 to 1988, he was the Minister for Foreign Affairs and International Relations. In 1998 to 2001, he was the Minister for Education and Human Resource Development. And I think from records, for those of us in Kenya, one of the most successful ministers for education of this country. He was a Minister for Tourism and Information in the year 2001-2002. He was a Minister for Foreign Affairs again between the year 2004-2005. And 2008 to 2013, he was the Vice President and Minister of Home Affairs. He is currently the leader of Wiper Democratic Movement of Kenya, one of the biggest political parties in this country, and has worked with many of our political leaders to bring the democratic space that we have today, to which most of us actually appreciate. He was also elected Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly of Kenya, and he has attended so many meetings, both locally, regionally, and internationally. And as I said, the list is long. If I had to read it so that I may take a very long time, I was given almost 3 pages, and he told me because he has very short time to be with us here, and he wants to combine 2 of the assignments he had. I think I find it reasonable that I don't read the 2 pages that I was given. But I must say that he's a scholar in his own right. He has been in the political scene for so many years in this country. And some of us who have been following politics do appreciate that where we are today, he has done a lot of contribution. Brother Kalonzo Musyoka, may I now take this opportunity to welcome you to address the congregation.
Thank you so much. I thank you, Brother Okwaro, for your kind remarks, and also recognize the presence with us of very distinguished leaders in the trade union movement, and indeed at the level of the International Labour Organization. President of ITUC, President of WATU, in absentia, but represented ably by Brother Okwaro, Francis Atwoli, and Mr. Secretary General. You come from a country that is very significant in very many ways, Algeria. And if I had time, I will talk to you about my relations, my interactions with President Bouteflika, and how he was able to help the country of Sudan to move forward and actually realize the signing of the Comprehensive Peace Agreement, in itself leading to the birth, literally, of the newest country on earth, the Republic of South Sudan. And no wonder President Uhuru Kenyatta thought I could continue to assist his brothers and sisters in the region. Dr. Mohammed, thank you. I missed that cup of tea. 10 years is a long time. And you were very generous in Geneva. And so, fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen, karibuni sana Kenya. Karibu is a word for welcome. And you know, we've been struggling hard to get the Kiswahili. In fact, Kiswahili is one of the working languages now within the framework of the African Union Commission. I think Fulani in Nigeria, also in the West African region, have been trying. But Kiswahili is a tremendous asset in this region. Never mind the fact it was born in Tanzania and grew up in Kenya. It died in Uganda and got buried in the DRC. But, so we say very warmly, karibuni sana. I In fact, sitting there, remember, this is a very historic room for me, because some 41 years ago, a young graduate from the University of Nairobi, I came in here, and the Rotary Club of Nairobi, in conjunction with International Computers and the Nation Media Group, awarded me my first air ticket out of this room to go and study in Cyprus. That is where you meant that. So although you look squeezed, maybe Brother Atwoli wanted me to come and remind myself about the significance of this room. But I know that COTU Kenya seem to like this hotel. Therefore, we have a common liking. When you also say that I was a board member of COTU, I think you overstretched the point. But I like the fact that I'm a brother. I actually love that word, brother. And we have sisters here. Within the trade union movement, it's in my persona to consider everybody a brother and a sister. From the scouting world and other worlds as well, where scouts will tell you a scout is a brother and a sister to every other scout. But the trade unionism movement is so significant. And your reference to brotherhood is important. But I think you are also at the risk of losing everything. Now, that was a very strong statement. By listening to Dr. Ayuba Waba, the president of International Confederation of Trade Unions, and what he actually has to say about the future of work, is indeed the fact that that work itself faces some serious threat in the 21st century, and within the framework of what you're looking at as the fourth industrial revolution. President Bouteflika and the people of Algeria, I know that he has had to be overthrown by a revolution. A revolution seems to be the alternative route to perhaps advancing the cause of trade unionism in Africa. Another very heavy statement. We've just seen a revolution in Sudan. What does this mean to the trade union movement? I'm making these remarks before I read the official text, because I'm excited to think through some of these issues. The future of work, and the challenge of the demographic change in Africa. Yes, Africa being the youngest continent. And we have heard it from Brother Ayuba, that between Google, Microsoft, and these ICT companies combined, they have gross product larger than the whole of the economies of Africa put together. And yes, some of us hold the view that the time for Africa is now. Therefore, I think the challenge that the trade union movement and all the leaders in Africa face has to do with mobilizing what we know is our advantage, and that is the fact that a lot of our continent, this continent is a young continent, while Africa is, Europe is aging. Never mind, they quarrel so much between themselves, and it's now if you go to the UK, you don't want to know whether it's Brexit time or not Brexit time. Yeah. And even the fact of elections everywhere, where we hear of Cambridge Analytica and the effect it has had on elections. I'm going to touch on that briefly. Where is the time for Africa? In the midst of all this, I believe the future lies in our in our youth and in our women. Because if we assume that the average country in Africa today, Kenya, if we are to take Kenya for a start, you realize that those of us aged above 60 are actually in the serious minority. This country is very young. Over 65% of our population is now aged below 30. They are impatient for work. They want to find employment, but they leave. We churn them out of our universities and other public institutions every now and then, every year. I think in this country you talk about 500,000 Kenyans who go into the job market every year, and there are no available jobs. I see you're going to visit Isuzu East Africa Limited at some stage. Now, these are the reasons that have brought about revolution in Africa. So, ladies and gentlemen, it looks to me that where trade unionism has failed, Africans are taking the challenge themselves, particularly the young ones, and expressing serious disgust with governance, with stealing of our resources in Africa, with marginalization, and taking their future in their own hands, literally. I know that at the level of African Union, everybody has committed to the fight against corruption. And I notice that my good friend, Dr. Lumumba, will be coming to talk to you, or probably has spoken to you about the challenge of corruption in Africa, in my own country, Kenya. And this is a fact, this is what is actually fueling the feelings of the young ones, that those jobs are stolen by the mandarins of corruption. Because if everybody was to do some honest work, we'll be able to grow economies by double digits. Unless, for instance, we grow in Kenya at over 10% for the next 10 years. I think Ethiopia has tried. Because Ethiopia, until recently, I do not know the current situation, but in the last decade, Ethiopia's economy has been one of the fastest growing economies in Africa, sustained for a decade at about 8%. And if you go to Addis Ababa, you'll be able to realize what it is that I'm talking about. So, ladies and gentlemen, Africa faces tremendous challenges. And I want to tell you that in this country, following the famous handshake, you have heard about handshakes here, and sometimes hug shakes between President Uhuru and Prime Minister Raila. My good friend did not tell you that I was the running mate, presidential running mate, twice for my brother Raila Odinga. And twice we have had to face. In fact, once I ran as a presidential candidate. That is not even captured. And why is it we struggle this way? It is because we love our country. And this particular time, we decided to join together with President Uhuru in order to expel, literally, the ghost of corruption in this country. Because this is what is militating against availability of jobs in our country. I'm quite sure each of you may have stories to tell about the rest of the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, those were my opening remarks. Let me now come to the text. And you might find that it might sound repetitive because I've had to touch on that. But I felt that it is important that we give you the framework within which we operate at the time you have come to Nairobi at this particular time. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, it does give me great pleasure to be able to address this esteemed workshop and again invite you and say karibuni sana. As you are definitely aware, in 2019, the International Labour Organization commemorates the 100 years of advancing social justice and promoting decent work in the world. In celebrating 100 years of ILO, African trade union organizations, like other social partners in the world, I've been participating in the discussions and debates on the future of work. I'm happy to learn that this workshop, which is essentially pre-OATU General Council activity, will involve presentations and discussions and group work, and that at the end of this seminar, the participants will adopt trade union strategies and actions on the promotion and implementation of the ILO Centenary Declaration 2019 and the recommendations of the ILO Global Commission report on the future of work. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I feel extremely privileged to be part of this historic event. Let me turn to the gist of my speech. I've been tasked to talk about Kenya's political history and democracy. I'm not surprised because Brother Francis Atwoli is part of that history. And if he was actually here, he, in introducing me, probably would add a little dance to it, because I know how strongly he feels, and he has seen Kenya's political history and indeed our sense of democracy. Since this gathering is a curtain raiser to the celebration of 100 years of the labor movement, and I'm actually told this happened about June, Dr. Mohammed, I believe I can only do justice to this topic if I tie up Kenya's political history and democracy with the history of the labor movement in my country. For starters, Kenya has been a democracy since attainment of our independence from Britain in 1963. Democracy within courts, by its definition, is, again, I want to quote, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Was it not Abraham Lincoln, one of the great American presidents, who actually defined democracy as such? When we say that a country is democratic, we mean that its leaders are chosen by the people themselves. And in other words, it is the people who elect their leaders through popular suffrage. And I want to pause here and ask myself and all of you, fellow delegates, whether it is not time for Africa to redefine democracy in the light of what I told you about recent contexts. And I think a lot of it to do with technology, where citizens come out to vote in large numbers, only to discover that their vote at the end of the day does not matter. So we need to redefine democracy. Since 1963, Kenya has been having a general election every 5 years, with the exception of a few instances where those elections were called before the expiry of 5 years. However, the snap elections, one happened in 1966, and I think another one in 1983. These have been the exception rather than the norm. Granted, Kenya, like many other countries, and especially those in Africa, has experienced some missteps where its democracy has been tested to the very limit. We have had instances where, for example, hotly contested elections have almost dragged our country literally to the precipice. Fortunately, though, we have been able to pull through and avoid what would otherwise have been catastrophic outcomes. But then, how many countries on the globe can boast of flawless democracy? Very few, if any. And I wanted us to say, really to begin to think in the light of organizations like Cambridge Analytica, whether Africa is going to continue with that type of democratic conduct. And this is why, again, some of the African countries have taken to the streets, leading to revolutions. But let me digress. Keen observers will notice the close relationship that exists between trade unionism and democracy. Just like Kenyans hold elections every 5 years, so do our trade unions, where workers are given the opportunity to freely choose those they wish to lead them and agitate for their welfare before employers. Hence, This right to choose representatives at the workplace is a fundamental basic human right. It is a perfect example of democracy in practice. Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, the close relationship between the labor movement and democracy in Kenya is exemplified by the fact that our nation has had a robust history of trade unionism, where many trade unionists have risen to prominence and to become members of parliament through popular vote. I'll give you examples. This include the late Tom Joseph Mboya, one of our foremost trade unionists. And I once ran into a former president of Zambia, the late Chiluba, who told me his political mentor was the late Tom Joseph Mboya. With other names like Dennis Akumu, Fred Kubai, Pio Gama Pinto, Paul Ngei, Joseph Mugala, and George Muchai, to mention just a few, but a few. And of course, George Muchai was killed not so long time ago. The same situation has been replicated elsewhere in Africa and in other parts of the world. The current South African president, Cyril Ramaphosa, for example, was a pioneer architect of South Africa's National Union of Mine Workers. It must be that out of his leadership of trade unionism, he learned dexterity, because I saw him apply that recently when I was privileged to accompany President Uhuru Kenyatta at the burial, state burial of the late President Robert Gabriel Mugabe. And the whole place was aflame with Zimbabweans shouting down President Cyril Ramaphosa because of xenophobia attacks that have been taking place in South Africa. I saw President Cyril Ramaphosa rise to the occasion and actually did what a lot of African leaders do not do, I cannot dare do, apologize in front of the world media. Apologize on behalf of his country. And with that apology, Zimbabweans are able to take it. I think we want to congratulate President Cyril Ramaphosa and others like him who have the humanity to say, sorry. So you can see other prominent trade unionists who rose to national and international limelight include, of course, the American Civil Rights Crusader, the late trade unionist Martin Luther King Jr., as well as Lech Walesa, whom I had occasion to visit in Warsaw. In fact, I think after I left office, remember the Gdańsk revolution, where when President Lech Walesa led a successful nonviolent struggle, which eventually brought the end of communism in Europe, and later served as the first democratically elected president of Poland between the years 1990 to 1995. Having seen the vital place of trade unionists in democratic change, I sincerely hope my brother, Ndugu Francis Atwoli, who dons many hats, including that of Secretary General COTU Kenya and President of the Organization of African Trade Union Unity, OATU, will perhaps consider vying for political office one of these days. I wish Brother Atwoli was here. Please convey this message to him. In the footsteps of other great trade unionists who came before him. And truly, those who know Brother Atwoli will know he's up to the mark. So, but I also was able to attend your May Day celebrations this year, Mr. Deputy Secretary General. And I must admit that the workers in this country looked timid. I was there many times before, but this particular year, ladies and gentlemen, I must tell you, and this is my challenge to you, the Kenyan worker sincerely looks downtrodden, uncertain, maybe because of the uncertainty about the future of work. Distinguished guests, delegates, ladies and gentlemen, most of you must have taken cognizance of the fact that countries with cordial union-employer relations often enjoy better productivity and less industrial disruptions. I must emphasize emphasize here that I'm, however, not advocating for a situation where workers' representatives connive with employers to stifle employees' rights. No, not at all. What I envisage is a situation whereby trade union leadership strives to operate in a harmonious relationship with both the employers for the mutual benefit of both the workers and the investors. The need to strike the right balance between the workers' rights and employer rights cannot be overemphasized. And I had a representative of the employers in this country speak before me. This goes hand in hand with the need to foster closer and harmonious relationships between trade unions and employers so as to avoid excessive combativeness and/or brinkmanship that may be inimical to the well-being of the worker as well as the investor. It is a fact that muzzling of employee rights by an employer often results in low morale, leading to poor productivity, and the result is a kind of worker that I saw on May Day this year. In the other extreme end of the pool, excessive demands for awards by workers often end up crippling industries due to astronomical costs. I would like to emphasize here on the importance of adherence to court orders by both the employer and the employee as well as their representatives. We have seen a culture in this country evolving, very worrying culture, of impunity, where courts make declarations and they ignore. Absolutely no one even stops to blink. You are either there for a country under the rule of law or one that is led by anarchy. Adherence to the edicts issued by the Employment and Labor Relations Courts is a key tenet for industrial harmony. There have been occasions in Kenya, for instance, where court rulings on industrial matters have either been defied outrightly or misinterpreted depending on the implications of such an interpretation. I'm convinced that the current impasse between the Teachers Service Commission and the Kenya National Union of Teachers, which basically revolves around the welfare of teachers, can amicably be solved through mediation. I've always offered myself to mediate in issues like this, and so I'm available with due regard to the ruling of Employment and Labor Relations Court regarding the issues in contention. I once, as Minister for Education, was confronted with a huge strike. And you remember my brother, Deputy Secretary General, had just come from Minister of Foreign Affairs and really the world of diplomacy. And then you are head and shoulders in a teacher strike. And the architects had not had even time to brief me. And so those were the KANU days. And you know, COTU was affiliated to, KANU is the founding party, literally. You know, what CCM is in Tanzania, or ANC is to South Africa, KANU was and remains a party remains in that capacity today in Kenya. Therefore, I was organizing secretary of KANU for many years. All of us were, actually, including my friend Raila, who merged his party with KANU. And everybody, former President Mwai Kibaki once said, you cannot compare the KANU, dismantling KANU to cutting a huge tree with a razor blade. Yeah? All of us have had our time with COTU, with KANU. And then that time, as organizing secretary, we had even made COTU a member of KANU. I think it was more by force than anything else. And that is when Francis, I told you, think I was there for an automatic member of the board of COTU. I'm quite sure it was not a very decent relationship because KANU was everything Mama and Baba. the father and the mother of the country, of the nation. So part of our political history and the labor movement. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished delegates, without belaboring the point, let me go back to the first concerning the basic right at the workplace. But I must conclude that when I was handling that teacher strike, maybe that's why you thought I was okay. Teachers, mainly the women, I actually made a mistake of saying, this is a strike. We own it together. We either swim or sink together. And as the Minister for Education, I want to guarantee that we are going to swim together. Now, the lady teachers heard me, and they went and demonstrated outside the ministry headquarters and shouted, some with placards. And my wife saw those placards because she was working nearby. And the placards went something like this: Minister with baby face, sink with canoe and not with teachers. If I had carried a copy of my book, I would have given you, because I make mention of it. So, ladies and gentlemen, respect for basic rights of workers is a must for every employer. These rights include, but are not limited to, the right to decent pay, maternity and paternity leave, the right for workers to go on leave at least once annually, and the right to medical care while on duty. Every employee, whether unionized or not, is entitled to the right of representation at his or her place of work. Employers, too, have the right to uninterrupted workflow in as far as they respect these basic rights. In short, there should exist no intimidation from the employer or blackmail from the employee. Each side deserves to have its rights safeguarded. And in these rights, some of these rights are included in our own. We have a constitution which I consider very progressive, and you hear Kenyans talk about the need to even make it better. It's very strong on the Bill of Rights and on Chapter 6 on matters to do with integrity. I cannot conclude my remarks without pointing out a disturbing trend that has stirred the labor movement throughout the years. That is interference by governments in trade unions. This practice is rife in third world countries that often view the labor movement as a threat to their government's existence. To me, this should be a big no. The emasculation of trade unions is a direct affront on workers themselves. Martin Luther King Jr. warned against government repression of the labor movement when he said, and I quote, "History is a great teacher." Now, everyone knows that the labor movement did not diminish the strength of the nation, but enlarged it. By raising the living standards of millions, labor miraculously created a market for industry and lifted the whole nation to undreamed of levels of production. Those who attack labor forget these simple truths, but history remembers them. End of quote. Delegates, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude my remarks, let me refer to what I consider, and I think it's been already referred to, as one of the major challenges facing the whole concept of the right to work. The labor movement and the workers it represents do have a formidable opponent, this time in the form of technology. You heard it from our brother from Nigeria. Technological advancement is already causing millions of job losses throughout the world. This is already happening in sectors long believed to be labor-intensive, such as agriculture, with modern drones performing hitherto manual roles, such as spraying pesticides. I must say I'm always actually mystified by the concept of a drone. These drones helping us in the neighborhood sniff out Al-Shabaab terrorists. Now the same drone is able to spray pesticide, the drone, whoever invented the drone. Yeah, now it's even depriving our people of jobs. This represents a momentous challenge to all of you in the labor movement as you strive to protect your workers from massive layoffs occasioned by technology. However, all is not lost. It behoves you to prepare workers on how to surmount these changes and challenges. And this can be done through learning new skills as well as adapting to the technological trends at the workplace. Needless to say, many of those who will not adapt will obviously be swept aside. However, as I said, all is not doom and gloom. There's a saying that behind every dark cloud, there's a silver lining. Technology is not a tale of disaster. Indeed, cyberspace offers millions of job opportunities as the world soars towards a virtual workspace zone. We are heading towards a situation where most future employees could be working from homes rather than from offices. In fact, even in this city, it is becoming unfashionable to work from your office. People have actually created what they call, the other day I went to open a garage. I studied a garage, I expected some mechanics, only to find young men and women all carrying their computers, and they actually just go there for the day and work from a garage. So renting office space is becoming somehow meaningless. Distinguished delegates, let me salute all of you, esteemed members of the labor movement, for the extremely vital role you continue to play in defending the rights of workers and workers worldwide. Were it not for you, all workers would be caught up in the situation of the famous Greek king by the name Sisyphus, who was forced to roll an immense boulder up a hill, only for it to roll down when it neared the top, repeating this action for eternity. In other words, were it not for your vital intervention during critical times, millions of workers, and I must add employers too, who continue to labor in vain without attainment of their rights, their goals, and life aspirations. You have heard about the need to involve women and labor. In the case of Kenya, I cannot really now conclude without bringing this to your attention. Facts about low level of representation of women in the top echelons of labor movement. This is quite apparent in the Kenyan case, where only less than 30% of women occupy the top slots in key unions, including KNUT and the very umbrella body of all workers, COTU. Without appearing to denigrate the role of their male counterparts, I will not hesitate to say there is an urgent need for affirmative action to ensure that more women take part in the top decision-making organs of the labor movement, not only in Kenya, but elsewhere in Africa and the world. With these remarks, it gives me singular honor to be able to declare the ILO ACTRA workshop officially open, and I thank you.
More and more claps, please. Yeah, I think now we'll have to go for the photo session. So our chief guest, maybe you will lead the way. The photo session is out. Thank you very much, our chief guest. That was really a mouthful. And all the other speakers, we want to thank you very much for those very good remarks. After the photo session, there will be a 15 minutes break. Thereafter, we expect you to come back for the second session that will be conducted by Dr. Mohammed. Yeah. Zuda will take over immediately after that. I'm also informed tomorrow the trip to, in the afternoon, is it Isuzu tomorrow? The ladies, you must put on safety shoes, huh? Not those stilettos. They are not, in the factory, they will not be accepted. So, yeah? They have to be closed. I'm told they should be closed shoes. So, if you don't have, I'm sure the visitors, the Kenyan ladies, you can borrow from them. Huh? No high heels. High heels, no, please. High heels are not allowed in the factory. Okay, let's go. Let's rush for the photo session, please. Photo session first before tea. You will take the tea later, please.